And ordinary common sense tells us that the trouble comes first and then thereafter the rules. Because things have gone astray and the elders say, oh, the young are going to the dogs, we have to lay down the law to them. But it is not as simple as that. You can see, I saw a headline the other day which said, cops riot in Haight-Ashbury. And there is a very curious thing whereby, after a while, the law, that is to say, authority and crime, form an alliance with each other. And the more you attempt to suppress crime, the more you stir it up. So that I just want to ask you to consider what kind of person would volunteer for service on a vice squad. And you have a criminal, obviously. You have a very deranged person. And so we tend, you see, as time goes on, that official types, people who are enforcement officers, begin to be the same kind of people as criminals. So that the law enforcement and crime reinforce each other all the time. They have an alliance. It's a symbiotic relationship, because lots of symbiotic relationships are contests. And so eventually what happens is that the government is the most successful group of gangsters. And when we know, we only have to read the history of Europe to realize that places like France and England and Germany, so on, particularly Italy, they were originally just bands of brigands. And certain brigands got stronger and stronger and stronger, and at last he was the government. And it still goes on. So the Taoists were trying to say to governors, look, lay off. Please leave things alone. Their idea, you see, Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching as a manual of advice to emperors. And he says, in other words, that the emperor, although he is above the people, they should not feel his weight. Govern a great state as you cook a small fish. In other words, if you have a small fish like smelts in the frying pan, you don't keep jostling them with a pancake turner, because the fish will just fall apart. You have to cook it very gently. See, less cooking is better than more. That's how the Chinese produce such beautiful vegetables. They hardly cook them at all. They have a method of heating them through very quickly and then serve it at once so that they're very crisp. Less cooking is better than more. So, less law. When about 250 BC, a new dynasty came into power in China. It was called the Han Dynasty. And it followed the Qing Dynasty. The Qing Dynasty lasted for 15 years. The Han lasted for 500. Qing Dynasty was a dictatorship. And this grandiose military emperor was going to found a dynasty that would last for 1,000 years. And he legalized in every direction. He made laws and laws and laws and caused only the right books to be allowed, and most of them were burned, and heaven only knows. When the Han Dynasty came in, they simply wrote all the laws off the books. They repealed everything. They kept about 2 laws against robbery and murder or something like that. And that was it. They wrote them all off. And that was one of the most stable and creative epochs in Chinese culture. So it was very close to anarchy. And you must understand what anarchy is in the true sense. Anarchy is not someone with a grizzly beard and a bomb running around trying to blow up airplanes and stop the public functioning. Anarchy in the West was invented by Prince Kropotkin who was a great Russian aristocrat, who had a theory about that the state is simply a nuisance, and that there simply should be no government in that sense at all. So that, in other words, if you're driving down the road and you see a rock on the road, you don't wait for the Department of Highways to get rid of it. You just stop your car and shove it over. And if everybody does things like that, you see, then things will go along and everybody will feel responsible because there's no government to say, you do it, see? Now, when you start thinking about that, you realize there's probably something to be said for it. But you can't take it quite literally. Because of karma, that is to say, because once you've started to interfere with the course of events, you're stuck with it. It's like it's an awful sticky business for us to get ourselves out of Vietnam. Once we've interfered there, see, we're terribly involved in all sorts of ways. And sometimes, of course, it is better, you know. It's like a marriage where both husband and wife are trying desperately to make the marriage work, and as a result of that, they get more involved and more involved and more involved with each other until they're both living in a wall-to-wall trap and loathe each other. And the only thing is to simply go in and break it up at all costs, you know, just get out of it. Because when people get more and more involved, under the supposition that they're doing the right thing, and they try to love each other, they don't love each other. And when you pretend to love someone who you don't love, all you do is create hatred. Because you don't like what you're doing, and the person very well knows that you are loving them not because you really do, but because you think it's your duty. And so they feel guilty. And it's a mess all round. So it's completely absurd to be dishonest with your emotions, with your feelings. So people say, well, but what if nobody delivers the mail? What if nobody wants to be the milkman? What if there are no garbage collectors? Mustn't there be some people who do their duty every day and hate it? Okay. Think ahead a little. All that resentment piles up and piles up and piles up. And one day it has to blow itself off. So, you've had your mail delivered, your milk delivered, your garbage collected regularly, all these things have been done for you, and it goes on for about 20 years. See? Meanwhile, everybody's getting more and more bored and frustrated and whatnot, and suddenly the bombers are over you. And the whole life is blown to bits. Practical, eh? You know, we're out of our heads. Absolutely. We've been lucky in this country. The Swiss have been lucky for 100 years. The Swedes have done fairly well by minding their own business, and we were far enough away so that nobody could reach us. But all that's over, technologically. And even if we don't suffer the consequences from an external enemy, we've brewed up plenty of trouble back here at home, and nobody knows what the answer to it is. Oppenheimer, shortly before he died, said that it's quite clear that the world is going to hell. The only chance it might not is that we don't try to stop it doing so. And what the point here is, you see, that rulers, if somebody has to be in charge of a social function, say like the district or the county sanitary inspector, now there's a useful man, and but he doesn't go riding around in splendor with escorts of police on motorcycles and reporters and cameras all over the place. And so in the same way, Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi are saying that anybody who governs should be very anonymous. There shouldn't be a fuss made over him. He's just like any other person going about his daily business. But the moment you start to make the central controller of everything, and you blow fanfares, and you make up a big thing and say, you know, the United States, hooray, 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 or whatever the country is, then you're in for trouble. So govern a great state as you cook a small fish. Now, let's look at that from the point of view not of the political state for the moment. I don't want to get into a long discussion of politics, but let's look at it from the point of view of the human being. Your organism is like a country, and do you have a boss in your body? There's a long passage in Zhuangzi about the organism. And it says that although it all seems to function together, which part of it do you prefer? Is there a kind of hierarchy of preferable parts of the organism? I've told some of you the argument between the head and the stomach. And the argument is that obviously the stomach is fundamental because it's the place where all food is digested and it supplies everything. And so therefore the stomach is the really important organ. And the head is simply the manufacture on the end of the alimentary canal which feeds the stomach of a seeking device, complicated seeking device for finding food. Now, the other argument is the argument of the head. The head says, no, not at all. Although I evolved later than the stomach was my forerunner, like John the Baptist for Jesus Christ. And really, the stomach is simply a gadget which serves the needs of the brain. The brain is culture, and is the fine arts, and is religion and music. And the stomach is just lower things. And you put food into your mouth, you know, and that's necessary. It's good for you. You're not supposed to enjoy it because you're supposed to enjoy higher things. So everybody is eating Wonder Bread and hot dogs and things, and saying that plain living and high thinking. See? Well, in a way, you can argue both points of view with equal validity. Say, yes, the brain is the main thing about man that's important. Or you can say, oh, the brain is just an adjunct to the stomach, that's all it is. You can argue it both ways, because there is no final truth about the matter. The interesting thing about a human being is that all his organs are mutually necessary to each other. It's true, you can get around with an amputated leg. It's true, you can function if you're blind, but with severe limitations, because all the organs are in a relationship. This is what we mean by an organic relationship. Everything is dependent upon everything else. Everything goes with everything else. And just as you don't find anywhere in nature a creature which is just a head. See? Imagine human heads suddenly coming into existence and rolling down the street, being alive and talkative. See, it's absurd. Imagine just a pair of legs someday you meet running along. It's ridiculous. So then in the ordering of this marvelous thing, you do really have a democracy of a certain kind. It's not like a voting democracy. It doesn't elect a president. But it all works together if left to itself. Now, occasionally, of course, we do salvage somebody's life by surgery.